Just start by sitting comfortably and scanning your whole body. See how your legs are at this moment. Are they comfortable or not? Do they need to move a little bit? I'm currently sitting on a chair, which I'm not really used to for meditation, so that's a little bit more uncomfortable. So I have to move a little bit. And feeling how you're sitting on your cushion. Is that comfortable? Now's the time to fidget. To get really nice and relaxed. Going up along your spine. All those muscles. Sometimes it helps just to stretch a little bit and then let it go. Letting your belly flop. Opening the chest. Just relaxing all the muscles there. Especially the shoulders. Sometimes it helps just to pull them back a little bit and then to let them go. Especially if you're tense. Sometimes you don't even notice how tense you are. Just give it some love and kindness. Going down along your arms, elbows, hands, fingers. What position are they in right now? And is that comfortable? Maybe you want to move them a little bit in some way, just to be more comfortable. Next to just relaxing, what we're doing is establishing our mindfulness. Relaxing the body, and our mind becomes more clear, more aware of what's happening right now in this moment. And bringing your attention to your throat and your neck. So what does it feel like? Is there any stiffness in the neck? You need to stretch that area too. And how does the back of the neck feel? Going over the top of your head to your face. Over 300 muscles in our face. Our facial expressions express how we feel. Can be lots of tensions there. So bring your attention to your forehead. What's your forehead like right now? What does it feel like? Just bringing some love and kindness, some mindfulness to these areas can already relax them. Just when you notice there's a tension, sometimes that's just enough. Around the eyes. And the temples. How does that area feel? Step it with love and kindness. Around the ears. Around the nose. And the cheeks. How about all the muscles around your mouth? And your chin. Just relax. Relax all of them. as much as you can. Check in with your whole body once again. Enjoy having a relaxed body. Just take a few minutes to really enjoy that. That's teaching the mind. And if you want to, you can take a few long, deep breaths. And with every out breath, just relax a little bit more. And allow your breath to come back to its natural rhythm. Just how it comes in and out. Without changing anything. Without trying to control it. Just how it is. You're observing the breath like this. After a while, you notice that without you doing anything, it becomes a little deeper and slower, all by itself. very helpful to also enjoy the breath. Just being here in this present moment. You have nothing to do, nowhere to go. Just being here with the breath. I've noticed that after a while, the breath changes, becomes calmer and more peaceful. Oh, peace. And you can try to just curl up the corners of your mouth a little bit into a little smile. See how that feels. Smile at your breath. Let go of all troubles and worries. Don't hang on to anything. Just enjoy being in the present moment. It's just a breath, just being here, together with all these wonderful people. Gonna come near to the end of the meditation. Instead of just getting up and doing things, just spend a few minutes to ask yourself or ask your mind that question. How did it go? Don't start thinking about the answer. Let's put that question out there. This is the way the mind learns. How did it go? Is my mind more tranquil and calm now than at the beginning? Even if you have lots of thoughts and it didn't go at all, your mind learns from that. Just those few minutes at the end. Finally, we share the merits of our practice with all living beings in the world. So many suffering beings. May they all be happy. May they all be peaceful. May they all finally realize Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Right. Oh, here we are. So today we're talking about Sammā Diṭṭhi Sutta, the right view. It's a very important sutta. And I have put a link in the chat to the Polish translation. If you want a translation in another language, you can also click on that and see if you can find one maybe in your own language by going to the top right button, which has parallels. I know it's not a very good label, but you click on parallels and then there's a list that says translations, and you click on translations, and there's lots of other translations. Like there's a very good German translation, and other than that, I'm not entirely sure, but you can have a look. And of course, you can look at Carolina's little tab on the top for the English translation that I will be reading out. Right, let's first give some introduction. I'll give you, I see some people clicking, so maybe I'll wait till everybody's finished looking at Sudha Central. All right. Right, so right view. Right view is a very important part of our practice. It's the first part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Noble Eightfold Path is not something that's completely linear. Like it starts with right view, but it doesn't mean that you have you have to have complete understanding of right view before you can move on to the next. That's not how it works. It sort of works almost automatic. Like first you start by hearing the teachings, listening to teachers, listening to YouTube maybe, or some other teachings. You're reading the suttas, and reading the suttas can be a bit challenging sometimes, because I know the first time that I started reading the Majjhima Nikaya, and especially starting with Majjhima Nikaya 1, which is not the easiest one, I didn't understand a word. I was like, what's this all about? And all these words that I didn't like, sort of, especially Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, very good translations, also a little bit archaic English sometimes. So I didn't quite understand what all this was about. And it wasn't until I started listening to teachers explaining these suttas that I began to understand also the vocabulary of these suttas, so I could read them and understand them better. So that's what we start with doing, and then we get inspired. Get inspired by what we read, what we hear, and we also want to practice. So we have this right intention coming along, and from that we start keeping our sila, our morality, our precepts, and starting to look at our verbal conduct, our behavior better, to see is like, can we make this a little bit better in some ways? So that's how we start. And then we look at our livelihood as well. It's like, well, do I have right livelihood? Is it like, am I not harming anyone? We start to get more and more attuned, more mindful of when we're harming other people. And then we start to sit on the cushion and practice. We come to the right effort to start practicing. And we start becoming more mindful, and then we get into the deeper meditations. And when with that whole process going on, you get insights. Oh, if I do this, it's harmful to others or harmful to myself because I feel hurt or I feel like tense if I do that. And so we can become more and more aware, and that feeds back right into the right view. So we get a right view first with intellectual understanding, and the next part is the more experimental understanding, and that continues on that process. So it's like an upward spiral. And so every time you get these insights, this spiral goes up a little bit more. All right. So let's dive right in and start reading this Sammā Diṭṭhi Sutta. I'm going to put you on the side here, and I'm going to read the sutta from my screen. So, right view. Now I'm reading Bhansujata's translation. So, at some point I will make some notes on, or I'll say a few words about the translation as well, because sometimes it's very good to read several translations, because then you can get a bit more of a feel of the wording. And if you are on Sutta Central and you really want to dive in, there's also this top button that says views, and you can look at the Pali text, and you can look at you can have a dictionary there. You can click on a Pali word and it will give you the dictionary, and so you can really use it for studying. Anyway, let's dive in. So, right view. So I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi and Jeta's Grove and Anathapindika's monastery. And that's the only time that the Buddha is actually mentioned in this sutta. But from the sutta, we get that Sariputta was there with him. So that's one of his chief disciples. And he's always attributed with getting people to stream entry, because that's right view is really very important for stream entry. If you have perfected right view, you're a stream enterer. So there the Sariputta addressed the mendicants. Now, Bhansujata remarks here that in the Chinese and Sanskrit parallels depict the discourse as a conversation between Sariputta and Mahakotika as another monk, but that context seems to have been lost. And here I just want to stop for a minute, because it's very important also to look at these different parallels. Now, what are parallels, for those of you who don't know? So at the time of the Buddha would be walking around and giving discourses everywhere where he'd come. And at the time of his death, or after his death, the monks got together and started collecting all these discourses of what they had heard from different places, and eventually those are written down. It's still a few hundred years later, but what happened after the Buddha's time, for a few hundred years, everything was just that. But you see more and more stuff coming in, so more and more teachings coming in, and also at some point the various schools started, because like missionaries went to various parts of the world. They didn't have internet, so they were no longer in contact with each other. So they started developing their own schools, and different schools started developing their own texts from their teachers, and explanations and commentarial texts, etc., etc. So, but all the schools have one thing in common, is they have these early Buddhist texts. And that's what Sutta Central is all about, in just early Buddhist texts. And what is early? Well, there's 4 or 5 Sutta Nikayas, as they're called. So the first 4 are mostly early. I say mostly. I have to be a little bit careful, because not all suttas in these first 4 books are actually early. But I won't go into the detail of that. About half of the last one, of the 5th one, is early. Then there is a part of the Vinaya, the monastic code, which is early, namely the rules for the monks, and part of the the things that like we do as a sangha of monastics, of how we work together. But all the rest comes from a later time. So the Abhidhamma comes from a later time. A lot of the Vinaya is from a later time. Also, a lot of the suttas, as I said, from the different schools, the commentarial texts also, they're all from a later time. That doesn't mean they don't have any value. It can be very helpful, but we have to keep in mind that they are the opinion of somebody a little bit later. So and I say it's like we're looking at these Chinese and Sanskrit parallels, it means the parallels of the early Buddhist texts that are also preserved in the other schools. And from that kind of study, we can learn a lot. We can learn how things might have changed a little bit, or some things have fallen out in one. And so we can learn quite a lot about how these texts have developed. So I will occasionally make some remarks on these kind of things while we're going along. So there, Sariputta addressed the mendicants. Reverend mendicants. Reverend, they replied. So I just want to say that the word mendicants as well, this is a Bhante Sujato translation. Most other ones will say monks. Most other translation will say monks. But monks, nowadays we think that, monks, bhikkhave, bhikkhus, that's just the men. And it's not. It's also the bhikkhunis, like the women. But that's why Bhante Sujato translates it as mendicants and to make it gender neutral, so that you know. So reverend, they replied. Sariputta said this. Reverence, they speak of this thing called right view. How do you define a noble disciple who has right view, whose view is correct, who has experimental confidence in the teachings and has come to the true teachings? So that basically, that formulation means stream entry. So stream entry is like the first stage of enlightenment, basically. So we will come back to that a little bit later on. Reverend, we would travel a long way to learn the meaning of this statement in the presence of Venerable Sariputta. May Venerable Sariputta himself please clarify the meaning of this. The mendicants will listen and remember. So this is like a standard passage. So how they would, we talk about like the standard passage that comes back everywhere. It's like when somebody says something, when a teacher says something, then you have to reply, Reverend, we would travel a long way to learn the meaning of this statement. So that's how it was done. Well then, Reverends, listen and apply your mind well. I will speak. Yes, Venerable. Yes, Reverend, they replied. Sariputta says this. A noble disciple understands the unskillful and its root, and the skillful and its root. Another translation that Bhikkhu Bodhi uses for that is wholesome and unwholesome. Unskillful and skillful is a little bit better. So we don't talk in Buddhism about good or bad things. We talk about skillful and unskillful. So skillful, if you want to have a certain goal, you have to do things in a certain skillful way to get that. If you do unskillful things, you walk away from the goal. So our goal is to, well, first of all, become happier and eventually to reach enlightenment. So what are the things that are skillful to do with that? So for instance, and we'll come to what the definition of that in a bit. When they've done this, they're defined as a noble disciple who has right view, whose view is correct, who has experiential confidence in the teachings and has come to the true teachings. So if you really understand what is skillful and unskillful, you have right view. That's basically what it says here. And then you are a stream enterer. But what is the unskillful and what is its root? And what is the skillful and what is its root? Killing living creatures, stealing and sexual misconduct, speech that's false, backbiting, harsh and nonsensical, and covetousness, ill will and wrong view. This is called unskillful. So let's stop here for a minute. gonna get rid of the devoted translation here. I don't have a very big desk, though. So you can see here the first four of, well, it was killing living beings, stealing and sexual misconduct, speech that's false, backbiting, harsh, or nonsensical. That's the first precepts that I think that everybody probably understands what those first precepts are. So the fifth one is not included here. So using drugs and drinking is not included here. So isn't that so? Is that not unskillful? It's like, why is that not here? Anybody has any ideas? You can unmute yourself because there's so many of you. I can't see all of you. So if you have any ideas, or maybe raise your hand, your virtual hands, then you come to the. If you have any idea about why this fifth one isn't here. No one? All right. Well, the fifth one, it is not that it's skillful. It's not that something is unskillful. It's skillful. It doesn't harm other beings directly. It harms yourself, but it doesn't harm other beings directly. These ones, the killing living creatures, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, that harms other people directly and other creatures. But when you drink, if you take a glass of wine, you don't harm anyone else yet. If you drink a little bit more, you might start, you become less mindful of what you're doing, and you might do something like this, like kill living beings, stealing, and especially false speech. It just becomes a bit easier to cross those lines. And that's why we have that fifth precept, but it's not mentioned here. And then the last three are like covetousness, ill will, and wrong view, which Bhante Sujata also notes are strong forms of greed, hatred, and delusion, respectively. So that's where we come to it next. What is the root of the unskillful? Greed, hatred, and delusion. This is called the root of the unskillful. So delusion, that's like self-view, thinking that there is a person in here who has, who keeps, goes from life to life, and thinking that what's suffering is actually happiness, and just not understanding, not understanding what happiness is, and also to think that what is impermanent is permanent. Everything, like anicca is one of those Pali terms that is very important in Buddhism. And quite often we think like, oh yeah, now I've got it. This is permanent. And then something happens. And you can see that happening in your meditation. It's like you're sitting there and if meditation is going really well and you go, oh, now I got it. This is it. My meditation is going to be like this. Now I really understood meditation. And the next time you sit, your mind is all over the place and you feel so bad and you haven't understood anicca, you haven't understood impermanence. So that is the root of the unskillful, is like things like not understanding that things are anicca. If you really understand that things are impermanent, you just let go of things. It's much easier. It's like, okay, yeah, I expected that, and that's fine. So you don't get so upset with the world. All right. So let's go to the skillful. So that's all the opposites of this. What is the skillful? Avoiding killing living beings, stealing and sexual misconduct. Avoiding false speech that is false, backbiting, harsh and nonsensical. Contentment, goodwill and right view. This is called the skillful. And what is the root of the skillful? Contentment, love and understanding. So let's say it's like, it is actually a better translation than Bhikkhu Bodhi, because Bhikkhu Bodhi says, he calls it like non-greed, non-hate, non-delusion. But it also means the opposite. All these things also mean the opposite. Avoiding killing living beings is also creating love and kindness for these living beings. Avoiding stealing, just creating generosity, etc. This doing things that not just not to harm others, but to do the opposite with love and kindness. So contentment, I would say here in this case, the renunciation also, and just being content with what you have is and yeah, love and kindness, goodwill, and non-delusion is, it says right view, which is a bit strange as we're actually talking about right view, but it's actually what the translation also says is Sammā Diṭṭhi, kusalang. So, or what the Pali says is basically becoming wise. And that is what we're doing right now, and that is the root of the skillful. Let me see. So a noble disciple understands in this way the unskillful and its root, and the skillful and its root. They've completely given up the underlying tendency to greed, got rid of the underlying tendency to aversion, and eradicated underlying tendency to the view and conceit I am. They've given up ignorance and given rise to knowledge, and make an end of a suffering in this life. So that is a standard passage indicating an arahant, somebody who is basically done it all. Who's done with, who's finished the work, so to speak. So the phrasing of that is a little bit problematic, as Bhante Sujato points out. He says, this passage, which is repeated throughout the sutta, indicates the arahant. The phrasing is problematic as it suggests that one has right view, which is stream entry, only after relinquishing all defilements, which is arahantship. And that's not true. So he also mentions like that the commentarial text, and we have a lot of commentaries on all these texts, they record a discussion of this problem, but in fact it's probably due to a textual corruption in the Pali text, as the parallels of Majjhima Agama 29 and Samyutta Agama 344, so that's the early Buddhist text in Chinese, they don't have this passage. So this shows how difficulties in the Pali text can sometimes lead to fruitless discussions in the absence of a broader context offered by the parallels. So this also shows why it's so important to look at these parallels. If you don't understand something, look at the parallels. You can also look at the commentarial texts, but knowing that they are from a bit of a later date and they're somebody else's opinion who might try to make sense of something that is already corrupted. So it's important to keep that in mind. All right. So when they've done this, they're defined as a noble disciple who has right view, whose view is correct, who has experiential confidence in the teachings, and has come to the true teaching. Saying, good Reverend, those mendicants approved and agreed with Sariputta said, and then they asked another question. But Reverend, might there be another way to describe a noble disciple who has right view, whose view is correct, who has experiential confidence in the teachings, and has come to the true teachings? So this is like, this last part also is this sort of standard passage that appears throughout the sutta every time. All right, so let me see, where are we? Okay, before we go to the next session, are there any questions right now? And the best thing is probably to raise your hand. And if you put it on the chat, and maybe there's so many things in the chat right now, I can't really, I can try, have a look at that, but.
We don't have questions on the chat, but Beata Rolak wants to ask the question. So Beatka, please.
I mute myself.
Beata, możesz zadać pytanie.
Hello, Venerable. How are you? I have one question. Can I tell in Polish? First of all, I will ask in Polish language, and then, okay, please. Czy może ktoś przetłumaczyć to? Czy możemy powiedzieć, że delusion, czyli ułuda, to widzenie...
Nikt nie będzie tłumaczył. Mów po angielsku i tutaj jest tłumaczenie, wiesz? Nie ma tłumacza.
Aha, okej. Czy możemy... Czyli mogę mówić po polsku i będzie tłumaczenie, czy nie? Napisane. Bo nie wiem, jak to powiedzieć po prostu po angielsku.
Postaraj się.
Dobra, postaram się. Okay, I'm sorry. Can we say that delusion is kind of vision things the way we want them to be instead of how they are, what they are in real life?
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's wait, but we twist
kind of mask.
Our perception twists how we see things. Our delusion also shapes our perception, and we think like we want to see certain things in a certain way, and then we start arguing with everybody who sees it in a different way, and that's absolutely true. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, so maybe you can take your hand off Beata as well. Wonderful. All right, so where were we? Number 10. Okay, there Sariputta says, replies. There might be reference. A noble disciple understands fuel, its origin, its sensation, and the practice that leads to its sensation. When they've done this, they're defined as a noble disciple who has right view, whose view is correct, who has experiential confidence in the teachings, and has come to the true teachings. So I think I'll come to the comments from Bhattacharya in a bit, but so what is fuel? I'll just read the whole thing out first. What is fuel? What is its origin, its sensation, and the practice that leads to its sensation? And you'll notice here that it is formulated in the same way as the Four Noble Truths. Where it says like what is suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the practice that leads to cessation of suffering. And then you see this all throughout the sutta. It puts everything in the framework of the Four Noble Truths. So what is fuel? These four fuels maintain sentient beings that have been born and help those about to be born. What for? Edible food. Kind of obvious. Whether solid or subtle. Contact is the second. Mental intention is the third. And consciousness the fourth. Fuel originates from craving. Fuel ceases when craving ceases. The practice that leads to the cessation of fuel is simply this Noble Eightfold Path. That is right view, right purpose. Okay, I would say right intention, but right purpose. Yeah, that's probably also a good one. Right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion. A noble disciple understands in this way fuel, its origin, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation. They've completely given up the underlying tendency to greed, got rid of the underlying tendency to aversion, and eradicated the underlying tendency to the view and conceit I am. They've given up ignorance and given rise to knowledge and make an end of suffering in this very life. So that's the same passage again. So, all right, I'll stop here and go back a little bit. What is this fuel? Now, Bhikkhu Bodhi translates this as nutriments, which is also a valid translation. And what is very interesting here, and we'll come back to that later on as well, is that fuel is the word ahara. And ahara is from the same etymological root as upadana, which means grasping or clinging. And that's something we come to later on. So that gives a bit more of a nuanced kind of understanding of what this word really means. It's sort of uptaking, grasping, something like that. So they maintain sentient beings that have been born and help those about to be born. So about to be born actually recognizes that there is some kind of state in between dying and being born again. So unlike the Abhidhamma, the later Abhidhamma traditions, who basically says it's instant, here it basically says it's not. So that's a bit to the side. And what's their edible food? Well, that maintains sentient beings is kind of obvious, whether solid or subtle. Contact is the second. Now, contact is interesting. It's like if we have our five senses, and with that we have a contact to the outside world. So if that falls away, we have nothing to stimulate us anymore. So then we basically can't live. That's why it's so important. And when somebody is in a coma, to keep talking to them, to keep stroking their hands, and to whatever senses might still be working, to try and keep on stimulating that and to giving that contact. This is very important for them to be able maybe to wake up again. Mental intention, or the will. Just looking at what Bhikkhu Bodhi says about these. Yeah. So this is about our will to live. If we give up the will to live, then basically die. And that actually happens, according to the teachings, with somebody like who is an arahant but doesn't cannot become a monastic or cannot teach, because the only will to live for an arahant is still to teach the Dhamma, to give the Dhamma on to other people. So that's a very interesting point, and we often get these discussions about, can a lay person become an arahant? Yes, you can, but you really have to ordain very quickly after that, because you only have 7 days to live after that if you give up your will to live. And then consciousness. So you need to have some kind of consciousness in order to be able to make sense of this world and to live in this world. So for fuel originates from craving. So that's interesting. It's like, okay, cravings for sensual pleasures, we can see that. That's for edible food, for instance, or contact with all kinds of sensual pleasures, with seeing things or hearing things, tasting things, smelling things, feeling things, all these things, we can see that, okay, yeah, we have some craving for that. Then, but the third one, the will, mental intention. We have the craving is also the cause of this will. And that comes from a sense of self. You're never being satisfied. You always want something else. And like when you're in meditation, what's happening if you're thinking? If you're thinking a lot and your mind goes out to other things, it's because you're not content in this present moment. You want something else. There's a craving there. So, and then the last one is consciousness. And when you go into deeper states of meditation, like in the jhanas, these things will start slowly turning off. Your senses start slowly turning off, first of all, and your will stops. You're just there in this present moment, and eventually consciousness turns off as well. But that's a very high stage as well. So, and it's not that if somebody becomes an arahant, they immediately die. Or they've like I said, first of all, they still have this mental intention to pass on the teachings, but there's also there is still a result of craving. You still have this physical body, So even if you stop eating right now, you won't die straight away. It will take a little while. So it's not like immediate. All these things take a little while before that turns off. All right. Let me see. Are there any questions about this passage before we go on to the next one? I think we can calls right. Bodhi has these wonderful little section headings, which is really helpful. So yes, the next one is the Four Noble Truths.
Venerable, we have two questions. Elizabeth, please,
Yes,
you can
Elizabeth.
unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you very much that I may ask my question. My question refers to what you have read, that nutrition is also a sort of support for beings still to be born, and that this is an indication that there is something between this existence and the future existence. Have I understood that right?
Yes, that's what how Ajahn Brahm and Bhante Sujato explain it. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And another question in this respect is, what came to mind when you read this was that when the Buddha explains in other suttas the conditions for rebirth, that there needs to be a mother and a father, and a contact of those, and the Gandhava, the being to be born, has to be present. And this also says, in my view, and do I understand this sort of Gandhava in the right way, that there is a sort of in-between state and a sort of being in this state, perhaps in a way as it is seen in the Mahayana tradition, in the Tibetan tradition, this bardo, as they call it, that this is an indication for this. How do you see that?
Well, I don't really know very much about the bardos and how that actually works. I think there's a very good book on that. It's the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, which explains that, but I've never read it. So, yeah, the Gandhava is like there's some kind of in-between state. It's like almost like a ghost, and like certain but like a fine material state, probably something like that. That's how I understand it. In certain traditions, they also leave out like food for the Gandhavas. And Ajahn Brahm says that that even for them to just smell the food, that's enough to be nourished by it. But whether that's true or not, I don't know. I can't say. But it's interesting to note the difference with the later Abhidhamma traditions. And yeah, I don't want to go too much into the whole topic because I don't really know much about it, to be honest. But yeah, I do believe that there is some kind of in-between state.
I personally thought that it's just the consciousness which is to be reborn, what is there in between.
Now, Ajahn Brahm describes rebirth, which I find nicer than this saying consciousness. First of all, the consciousnesses, there are 6 of them, so that makes it a bit more complex. But he describes it as a mango who is being put into the ground. And out of that mango, out of that seed comes a new mango tree, and it gets new mangoes. You don't get apples or bananas from putting a mango in the tree. So somehow that information from that seed has gone into these new mangoes, but these new mangoes are, you can't say they're reborn from the old mango. It's just that information has passed through and created this new one. So it's sort of like that. It's not like a self, because quite often if you get into these discussions, it starts like there's a self. It's like you die and then you become the Kandapa, and then you become. So that's more the reincarnation view of the Hindu traditions. And the Buddha said, no, that's not what is happening. It's more like a continuity of the flow of life, rather than a self that goes from life to life. It's just this information that passes on. So in what kind of form, and this information, and we'll come to that later on, also creates a new life in whatever form. And we'll come to that later on, or probably tomorrow when we get to the, or maybe later on today, if we get to that.
Thank you.
So maybe I'll discuss it then as well. But thank you for that deep question, Elizabeth.
Thank you. It was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else who has a question on the nutrition part before we move on?
We have two questions, Venerable, on the chat.
Yes.
So first one is, how does contact work as fuel for beings about to be born, especially for those who are going to woeful realms like hell? The contact is going to be unpleasant. How does the painful contact help maintain them?
Hold on, let me just read the question. I found it because it's a little bit echoey, so I didn't quite get it. Well, like I said, we for beings going to hell, we will talk about that a little bit later. But without contacts, when you don't have any contact, like if somebody's in hell, or well, if a being is in hell and they have no contact whatsoever, then it's not really hell for them, is it? Because they can't feel, hear, or smell, or taste anything. It's like, oh, fine, that's not that bad. But they don't have the pain. But you put yourself in hell, basically, or a being puts itself in hell because they feel they deserve it. And I will come to that later when I talk about bhava and upadana, the craving and uptaking of these things. So sometimes beings want unpleasant contact is better than no contact at all. Sometimes it's like one thing that you see also in the suttas, which is really interesting if you start reading through them, is how the Buddha also describes life as it is in the Iron Age, basically in early Iron Age. And one thing that people suffer from is what's that disease again? Leprosy. And leprosy is a really bad disease. There was no cure for it, and like slowly your hands and everything, it's very itchy. Apparently, I've never had it, luckily, but and slowly your bits of you start falling off and whatever. So it's very, very unpleasant. And what they used to do, they would go to a charcoal pit with have these burning coals and put it on their skin to alleviate the enormous itching. So the unpleasant feeling of the burning was actually more pleasurable than the feeling of the disease, which it's difficult if you to imagine if you have never experienced it. But this is the kind of things that you also see. People are seeking unpleasant sensations sometimes because at least it is sensations. It's some kind of sensations. And yeah, you can see all kinds of people also in our life who keep on going back to very difficult situations, to abusive situations, to anything, because at least it makes them feel alive. I've actually just read a book called The Body Keeps the Score from Bessel van der Kolk, which is a really interesting book if you talk about trauma. And it talks a lot about how trauma affects people in later life and how they start seeking these unpleasant sensations because it makes them feel more alive. If they don't have that, they can't live without that sometimes. So so that's a really interesting book to talk about, or to look at in that sensation. But we'll come back to this topic later on as well. Could this be perceived passage about nutrition be seen as a kind of dying before you die? And is it not at risk of being seen as some kind of nihilism? I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely with you there, Ellen. I'm not entirely sure what you would you, do you want to unmute yourself and explain? I can't hear you.
Yes, Alan. No, we can hear you, Alan. Although you are unmuted, we can hear you now.
No, we can't hear you. Sorry, Alan. Your microphone.
Can you hear me now? How is that?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, the definition of the 4 types of nutrition and the relation to meditative states. I've also seen that definition of the absence of those 4 nutritions as a kind of death in a sense. There's no senses, there's no food for the physical body. So is that kind of not a kind of annihilationism? Is that not a risk of being seen as being nihilism or annihilationism? Or obviously that's not what enlightenment is. Hopefully it's a kind of it's not I just want some clarification about that, because it seems so negative. And
this is something that's a big discussion.
Okay.
Don't go into it too much, but yeah, there is various streams of thought in this kind of thing, and but the way I've been taught also by Ajahn Brahm is that there is like once somebody reaches arahantship, they still keep alive because of this will to teach. And at the end, when their body becomes old and the body, they don't make new karma to create a new life. But the body still keeps going for a while longer, because like all the conditions before. And at some point when their body dies, then they basically stop existing. Well, there was never a sense of self in the first place. So what is actually dying if it's not a self? It is that like this, just the information doesn't continue on to form a new life.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
So it's not like a nihilism in the sense that nihilism basically says that this is one life. There's nothing else. Like
Okay.
After you die, that's it. And that's not what it says in the Buddhist text. Is after you die, if you're not an arahant, your information stream continues and continues to make a new life.
Okay, so if there's no perception of a self to die, then in a sense the continuity of life just flows on, and then it doesn't get reborn, if you like. It
doesn't get reborn if somebody has reached arahantship. Yes.
Okay, now I understand.
It's difficult to talk about because we use these terms as I and you and somebody and whatever that indicate a sense of self. It's because our language has never been created for anything beyond that. So we have to sort of approach that through language in a different way.
That makes sense.
Thank you. Okay, let's go on with, I have to try and, okay. Let's go on with the next part. Where are we? So I'm skipping this little part about of the ends, and then we get to the next one at number 15. But what is suffering? What is the origin, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation? Again, the same passage, rebirth. Oh, no, not the same passage, sorry. Rebirth is suffering, old age is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress are suffering. Being coupled with the disliked is suffering. Separation from the liked is suffering. Not getting what you wish for is suffering. In brief, the 5 grasping aggregates are suffering. This is called suffering. All right, so let's unpack this a little bit. Actually, the next passages will go into detail a whole lot more about these things. So I don't want to focus too much on this here. Yeah, maybe I'll leave that for the next passage. So this is called suffering. What is the origin of suffering? It's the craving that leads to future life mixed with the relishing and greed, taking pleasure here, there, wherever it alights. Okay. Sorry, the English here I found a little bit problematic because I can't quite. Yeah, but that is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. This is called the origin of suffering. And what is the cessation of suffering? It's the fading away and cessation of that very same craving with no residue left behind, giving it away, letting it go, releasing it, and not clinging to it. This is called the cessation of suffering. And what is the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering? It's simply these noble eightfold paths, blah, blah, blah. Right view, right immersion. This is called the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. The noble disciple understands in this way suffering, its origin is cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation. They've completely given up the underlying tendency to greed, got rid of the underlying tendency to aversion, and eradicated the underlying tendency to the view and conceit I am. They've given up ignorance and given rise to knowledge and make an end of suffering in this very life. When they've done this, they're defined as a noble disciple who has right view, whose view is correct, who has experiential confidence in the teachings, and has come to the true teachings. All right. So let's unpack this a little bit. So does it mean that somebody who's become an arahant cannot have any bodily pain anymore? Anybody wants to comment on that? No, it doesn't mean that. It's just like the body is still the body is still suffering. And we still have old age and death, and so that's all part of. They still can get sick, but they don't have any mental suffering because of that. Let's go back a little bit further to the craving part. So it's the origin of this suffering. I think this is a standard passage of suffering, what it is, and I'll come to that in a bit. And the origin of suffering is the craving that leads to future lives, mixed up with relishing and greed, taking pleasure wherever it's allied. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. Well, craving for sensual pleasures we can sort of get, right? And everybody has craving for sensual pleasures, for sights and sounds and tastes, etc. And one thing that it says here is that craving leads to future lives. That's your karma. It leads to future lives. Also craving for existence, wanting to be, wanting to exist. And it is this will to live, will to want to have new existence, to experience sensual pleasures again. So, but the last one is sometimes a bit puzzling, the craving for non-existence. So it's like for non-being, as Bhikkhu Bodhi says it. So that's sort of like a person who is suicidal, for instance. They think that if I just kill this body right now, I'm out of suffering. The Buddha basically says here that doesn't work. So that's not a way out of suffering. You just get more suffering. You get a new existence, and then you get more suffering. So because of it, so don't do that. Because annihilation, the craving for non-existence, it assumes that there is something that can be annihilated, that there is a sense of self. So that's what this one means. Now, I won't take questions here. We're getting it's already an hour I've been talking nearly. So I want to get into the next part, is the old age. And let me see, where were we? Okay, yeah, there we are. Saying, good Reverend, those mendicants asked another question. But Reverend, might there be another way to describe a noble disciple who has come to the true teaching? There might be, Reverends. A noble disciple understands old age and death, their origin, their cessation, and the practice that leads to their cessation. But what are old age and death? What is their origin, their cessation, and the practice that leads to their cessation? The old age, decrepitude, broken teeth, gray hair, wrinkly skin, diminished vitality, and failing faculties of the various sentient beings in the various orders of sentient beings. This is old age. And what is death? The passing away, perishing, disintegration, demise, mortality, death, decrease, breaking up of the aggregates, laying to rest of the corpse, and cutting off of the life faculty of the various sentient beings in the various orders of sentient beings. This is called death. Such is old age, and such is death. This is called old age and death. So this is not some kind of metaphysical thing. It's not about the death or in a moment or something like that. This is actually death and old age as we understand it. It's basically this body getting old and this body dying, just how we understand it normally. So quite often the Abhidhamma traditions, they start talking about birth and death in a moment, but this is not what it says here. This is a very clear definition. Let me see, where are we? So old age and death originate from rebirth. So basically, once you're born, you're stuffed. All of you have made a mistake. You all got born. Don't do it again. You're gonna be suffering. You're gonna have old age and death. You're gonna have sickness simply because you were born. The old age and death cease when rebirth ceases. And the practice that leads to the cessation of old age and death is simply this Noble Eightfold Path. So actually this whole sutta, we are going into that, exactly that, how it originates. So we're going, this is basically part of what we call dependent or origination, backwards. So we're going to look at, okay, what do we have? There's this suffering of old age and death and sickness and whatever. And what's the cause of that? Oh, it's being born. So now we're going to look at what is being born. And then we're going to go back each time. So, and then again, might there be another way to describe a noble disciple? There might reference a noble disciple understands rebirth. Its origin is cessation and the practice that leads to its cessation. But what is rebirth? What is its origin, is cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation? The rebirth, inception, conception, regeneration, manifestation of the aggregates, and acquisition of the sense fields of the various sentient beings in the various orders of sentient beings. Again, this is called rebirth. It's basically the same as we understand rebirth. So this is there's nothing metaphysical about this. It's like how the various beings, us animals, but also how other beings are created or start their life. Not sure if it's not specifically mentioned, but in the other suttas it says that, for instance, there are also beings who are spontaneously born, who just appear in a world. So that's also a form of birth. So it's just the appearing in the world. Manifestation of the aggregates. So the aggregates here are the khandhas. So that's another teaching I won't go into too deeply, but we have 5 khandhas. So that's form. Well, that's obvious. You have to have a body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, Sujata often translates it as choices and consciousness. So but we will come to all of those things also later on, so I won't go into it too deeply here. So this is called rebirth. And rebirth originates from continued existence, is the word bhava here. So I'll get to that, what that is, next. So rebirth ceases when continued existence ceases. The practice that leads to the cessation of rebirth is simply this noble eightfold path. Might there be another way to describe a noble disciple? There might be reverence. A noble disciple understands existence, its origins, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation. But what is continued existence, bhava? What is its origin, its cessation, and the practice that leads to its cessation? Now, there are these three states of continued existence. Existence in the sensual realm, the realm of the luminous form, and the formless realm. So here becomes a bit more difficult to understand, I think, like old age and birth, we kind of understand. That's like we know from our own experience what that is. But this bhava, that might be a bit more difficult. So let's unpack that a little bit. So the sensual realm, that's where we are. So, and there's also all the hell realms, and we also have to look at it a little bit and how they understood the world in the time and that time, or how they understood these things at that time. So there is the hell realms, the sensual realms, and there's also the deva realms. So they have like really lovely feelings and sights, and it's much more pleasurable than us. And the hell realms are, of course, a whole lot worse. So that's what's called the Kamaloka. Then the fine, or the realm of luminous form, but Bodhi translates it as the fine material beings. So those are the jhana realms. That's where when you go into jhana in your meditation, like that's that kind of realm. So that's very, very pleasurable. And then also the formless realms. I don't want to go into these realms too much of what has the formless realms is like the immaterial realms are the immaterial jhana, so the immaterial states. But these are I don't want to go into it very much of what these are exactly, but other than that, to say that they are the planes of existence. So these levels of being you can get reborn into. So in order to be reborn, you have to have a world to be reborn into. So otherwise, it doesn't work. Yes. See what. One thing you can also do, by the way, if you're looking at Bhante Sujata's translation online, you can look at this views button at the top right, and then you see also something like the first one that's setting there is show notes and variants in segmented text. So that's sometimes very illuminating also to look into. It's like what is there, and how does Bhante Sujata explain these things? So you can look into that more deeply. Sometimes it gives references also to the various realms or various other texts. And he also uses a lot about the texts of like the Vedic texts, the pre-Buddhist texts, how they understood the world at that time. So I'll just read out here what he writes about these realms, because it's quite interesting. So the idea of three worlds, or loka, just a minute, or states of existence, variously defined, is shared between Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism. It originally referred to the earth, the mid-space, and the heavens or the sky. The respective abodes of humanity, the ancestors and the gods. In the mythology underlying the Vedas, they were formed by Indra's heroic deeds, empowered by Soma. The first slew the dragon Vitra, who bound the world in a mass of darkness. Then he separated earth from sky, leaving the mid-space between, thus creating the visible and intelligible worlds. So it's quite interesting how these concepts have originated. Kim, could I ask you to get me something for Israel? Some honey or something? Yeah, thank you. Maybe a little honey in the hot water. Thank you. Sorry about that, I'm losing my voice. Okay. So is there any question about this part so far? I'll get you back in my screen.
Yes, we have a question from Carolina.
Hi, Carolina.
Hi, Venerable. I just wonder if the continuous existence, like, the three states, can we relate the phrase about to be born to the continuous existence? Like, sort of, you appear in that in one of that state, and then you're born.
That's a very good question. Basically, you're asking is like, well, if or for instance, have like in Buddhism also have the ghost states. And so these are all fine material states. We have deva states, etc. But what I understand the Gandhabba to be is being something in between that. So something that wants to get born in a certain existence, but isn't quite there yet, if that makes sense. That's how I understand it. Of course, rather than already being, because otherwise you would say Gandhabba is the same as a ghost, and it's not. So people that are born in the ghost realms, in the Peta realms, they are, or beings that are being born there, they have a very strong craving for sensual pleasures, and that's why they find it difficult, but they can't really understand where they are at that moment. They're trying, they don't even know sometimes that they have died. So that's the description of that. But a Gandhabba is something that actually is looking for this new existence in this certain realm. So I see it's slightly different, but it would also be, there's some overlaps in that it's a fine material form. And but I do see it as a distinct difference thing.
Okay, thank you.
So there was a quiet. So in the Sammā Diṭṭhi Sutta, birth jati leads to suffering. If somebody chooses not to have children, renunciation, not feeling samsara, is clearly seen as wholesome, kusala. But what about compassion, not wanting to condemn a potential being to physical suffering? Could this second motivation be misunderstood as unwholesome aversion or fear of life? Can both motivations work together as true right view? Well, if your renunciation of not having children is like because you become a renunciant and become a monastic, then that is a wholesome thing to do, yes. But I don't think having children in itself is unwholesome, because that would be the implication of what you're saying. That's not how it works. Of course, we have to see, it's like, what is our, thank you, Kim. What is our reason for wanting to have children? Sometimes these things happen because we don't choose to as well. So, and sometimes it's not even because we are choosing to have sexual intercourse. So there's all kinds of reasons, and it's not just it's children. I mean, beings are also being born in all kinds of other realms, like in the Deva realms, they're spontaneously born. So it's not about having children. So it's not so black and white there. Compassion of not wanting to condemn a potential being to physical suffering. Maybe it's also compassion to help a being come out of suffering, because otherwise, if you don't have the child, that's fine. But the Gandhava will find another thing to be born, or another person, or it finds some other way of being born. So they will still have suffering. At least, like, you can maybe show them a little bit of the right way. Again, this is not so black and white, and it depends a little bit, a lot on your own motivation. Why are you doing what you do? So that's basically what I would like to say about that. So you look in your own motivation. Why do you do certain things? Sometimes people don't have children because out of fear. Then the fear is something you have to address. Or out of negativity, that's something to address. So yeah, it's not about whether you have or haven't children. It's about what are your intentions there. All right. I think I will want to stop here in a minute, unless we still have. Is there still any questions? We still have 15 minutes. Yes, Beate.
I have one question, and it is, can we understand equanimity as emotional balance in relation to a given situation?
Can you say that again? Can you repeat that?
Equanimity. Can we see, can we understand equanimity as emotional balance by approaching to any situation in our life? For example, if there is someone who's shouting on you, I just stay steady without any bad emotions toward this person.
Yes.
That's what I mean. If this is it, I know this is a long path to get there, but I'm not sure if my way of understanding it's proper. Good.
Yeah, I think it's a good way of looking at it. But equanimity, or the word upekkha, is quite often very misunderstood in the West, and quite often it seems like not having any emotions at all. Just like whatever it is, it's like this Teflon kind of mind where everything bounces off. But equanimity or upekkha is part of the four Brahma Viharas. So the loving kindness, the compassion, the sympathetic joy, all that is in there. So it is a very rich kind of things, upekkha. It's not like you see somebody beating up another person and you go like, oh, I'm just equanimous, I don't care. I'm not going to do anything about that, because no, you step in, that upekkha steps in while simultaneously understanding that both the aggressor and the victim are victims in a certain way and are hurting themselves as well as the other. Because as soon as you do something like you get angry, exactly, Ellen, it's not the same as indifference. Like when somebody gets angry, they're first of all hurting themselves. So if you come from that kind of understanding of compassion, you can look at the person as like, oh, you're angry. I'm not going to get affected by it, as in like, what's going on here? And I'm going to get my heart racing or whatever. Now I'm going to have compassion towards this person because they're hurting themselves right now. And there's a beautiful, I always find this a really beautiful story. It's this queen So it's in the time of the Buddha, and there's a king, and he has two queens. And the second queen was quite jealous of the first queen. The first queen is a very good meditator, and at some point the second queen puts a snake in the marital bed of the king and queen, and the king finds the snake and gets really upset. It's like, oh, my queen is trying to kill me by putting a snake in our bed. And so he gets really upset, but the queen, she stays very, very equanimous, and she's like full of love and kindness for the king who is so enraged and hurting himself, and she's trying to help him calm down and be more settled. So that's what equanimity does. That's it's the difference.
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer. Thank you very much. And there is one more thing, just very short one, if I can ask about. Can I understand to having children? Is it something like giving them opportunity? Some kind of stream of consciousness is getting opportunity to get better in this life and then finish this life forever. Like, I'm not sure if this is a good question.
Like I said before, it depends very much on your own why you do that. Is that and also look at the underlying reasons, because sometimes we have a reason in our mind why we think, oh, I'm doing it because out of compassion or do this, but look at the underlying. It might be so, it might be completely true, but you look at the underlying I lost you. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the underlying intentions of what is going on there.
But it's nothing like it's not like people are selfish if they have no children. Kind of do not give them a chance to go to the
children. Am I selfish? I have devoted my life to teaching all of you.
No, it's going about normal person, not like a monk.
I'm not a normal person. No, don't worry. I'm just making fun. I'm just making fun of you. Don't worry.
No, that's why I'm laughing. Thank you so much.
There can be all kinds of reasons. So
no, I mean, people are getting pregnant. A woman is getting pregnant, and she just, decides to finish this pregnant. So is going to the doctor and finish this life of the child. That's
that's perfectly fine. And like if nobody would have children anymore, we also wouldn't have new people to teach.
That's great.
Like if people or beings get reborn in the animal realm, they cannot get enlightenment in this life. They cannot understand the teachings. Even the Deva realms, the Buddha said everything is so perfect and nice there. There's not much motivation. Like we have this balance of suffering and happiness that we can see that, okay, there is suffering in this world and I want to get out of this. But still having the opportunity to do so. Well, in the hell realms, you might know for yourself that if you are depressed or if you are overcome by a strong emotions, it's like you have blinkers on. You can't see anything else. You can't see the way out of that moment. So maybe after a while, because you have been practicing for a very long time, then after a while you can get out of that. But hold on, my voice is giving up.
Oh, that's absolutely normal when you're talking so long.
I'm just going to close the door because somebody came in the kitchen. And it's making a little bit of noise. I just discovered how to disappear. It's like if I go a bit further down, then you see what I'm having that's just Zoom. Anyway, that's just yeah.
Okay. I think I understand. Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you very much, Venerable.
You're welcome. All right. Shall we do a few, if there's no more, is there still any questions?
Yes, there is another question on the chat.
Thank you. First of all, my question is recognizing what happens to me as the result of my actions, part of right view. Oh, yes, absolutely. Enjoying what is pleasant as the result of my past wholesome actions, and understanding that what happens to me is unpleasant as a result of my past unwholesome actions. To a certain degree, but it's more about that it can be. But there's also one thing that really struck me is there's one sutta where the Buddha goes over all kinds of diseases, and that were at least known at that time is that we can have and that we need to contemplate as a monastic. So it's like, well, this is this body and it can have all these kinds of diseases. There's only one listed there that is diseases as the result of karma. Not all diseases are a result of karma. It also lists diseases as a result of climate, for instance, and things like that. So it's not necessarily that if something really bad happens to you, it's all because it's your fault, because of your karma. It's more like, how do I react to this now? Do I react to it with negativity? If something unpleasant happens, do I react to it with more equanimity, what we just talked about? Do I react to it with depression? What is going on there? And that is where we can learn. And that's how we can create our habit patterns for the future. So it's more like our habit patterns on how we react to things. It's not necessarily that if something happens to you that is bad, that it is karma. It can be, but it's not necessarily so. It's how you react that creates the good habit patterns for the future, or yes, that's more important. All right. Any more questions? Otherwise, we just do quick, like 10 minutes meditation. And then we come back to the next part, which is Upadana, clinging. Next tomorrow. Right. All right, let's meditate for a few minutes. So again, you sit comfortably, relax. Checking in with your body. Noticing your breath. And then think of all the people assembled here in this virtual space or in the room that you're at. I wish them all well. Thank you all for coming. May you all be well. May you all be happy. May you all be peaceful and at ease. Think of all your family members and friends who couldn't be here right now. May they all be happy. May they all be peaceful. And all the beings in the world above us, all the birds and insects, below us, the creatures in the ground or the floors below us. May they all be happy. May they be peaceful. In all directions of the world, in the north, east, south, and west. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. All beings, big or small, far or near, human or non-human. All the animals, whether they're very tiny or very big, on the land or in the oceans, whether we can see them or not. All beings there may be in the other realms. May they all be happy. May they all be peaceful. May they all share in the merits that we've made through our practice. May they all finally realize Nibbana. And finally bring your attention back to yourself. Be the center of our own universe. And wish yourself well. May I be happy. May I be happy. May I be happy.
Thank you, Venerable, and thank you all of you for today's meeting. And we will see tomorrow at the same time. So have a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for coming. It's been wonderful to see all of you. Even from Finland, even. Wow. I can't see all of you at all events, so if I miss you, most of you from Poland. And from Malaysia, oh, wonderful. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
See you soon.